HR issues can kill you. One complaint against your company can turn your world upside down. And you spend way too much time dealing with HR when you should be spending your time on making a profit. You should talk to Bambi. With Bambi, get access to your own dedicated US-based HR manager starting at just $99 per month. They get to know you and your business while providing HR expertise and the personal touch you need and want. They're available by phone, email, and real-time chat, so onboarding and terminations run smoothly. Team members reach peak performance, and your business stays compliant with changing HR regulations. And with Bambi's HR Autopilot, you'll automate important HR practices like setting policies, training, and feedback. HR managers can easily cost $80,000 a year, but Bambi starts at $99 per month. Schedule your free conversation today to see how much Bambi can take off your plate. Go to Bambi.com right now and type in Accelerate under podcast when you sign up. It'll really help the show. Spelled BAM, BEE.com. Bambi.com. Type in Accelerate.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth with your host, Diane Helbig. Diane is a leading small business development and leadership coach, author, and speaker who is passionate about sharing valuable ideas, tips, and techniques with business professionals worldwide. Diane brings you the world's experts and gurus in all things business. Whether it's sales, structure, social media, planning, or plateauing, guests bring their expertise and energy to each episode. When growing your business is your focus, Accelerate Your Business Growth is the show to listen to. Got a topic or guest suggestion? Let Diane know. The goal is to make sure you have the information you need to move your business forward. Thanks for joining us. Settle in and enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's podcast is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken audio entertainment and information. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Get a free book when you sign up for a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/businessgrowth. Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast continues to enjoy inclusion on lists of the best podcasts to listen to. Everywhere from Proven to Inc.com to Forbes.com and a whole bunch of other sites in between. We are continually gaining recognition as a great resource for business and entrepreneurs. This is really because of the guests who join me. They share their expertise with all of you. You take what you need into your business and hopefully are able to convert that knowledge into greater success, whatever you define that to be. Today is no different. My guest today is Bill Coletti. Bill is a reputation management, crisis communications, and professional development expert, keynote, Wall Street Journal risk and compliance panelist, and best-selling author of Critical Moments, The New Mindset of Reputation Management. He has more than 25 years of global experience managing high-stakes crises, issues management, and media relations challenges for both Fortune 500 companies and winning global political campaigns. Previously, Bill served in the Republic of Bulgaria as a senior advisor to the Prime Minister, Council of Ministers, and the Labor Minister, which, believe me, we will be asking him about later. Thanks so much for joining me, Bill.
Thanks so much for having me. This is a great conversation, and congratulations for that amazing recognition for the work you're doing and for the podcast. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. It really, I mean, all of the kudos go to the guests. I've been really fortunate over the years that incredible people have been giving of their time and joining me for one of these chats. And what we are going to be talking about today is a critical topic for, I think, any size of business, because especially it seems like in this day and age, crisis or reputation management is sort of like a minefield, it feels like. There's so much going on that's being uncovered all the time.
Yes, absolutely true. A lot of different clients from large enterprise level to smaller entrepreneurs and just solo practitioners get caught up into this sort of expectation of the public and their actions and the disconnect between those two. So what happens?
Yeah, it's crazy. So talk to me about how how corporate crises impact a company's reputation.
Yeah. So if I mention United Airlines, a lot of people will think about the last trip that they took. Some people will think about the wonderful customer service they had or the horrible customer service they had. Some people will think about in 2016 when a passenger was in an overbooked situation and was drug off the plane, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Dow. And so Dr. Dow was drug off the plane by it was in Chicago, by Chicago Aviation Police. And there's a lot of people that when they think of United, they think of that. Now, that's fleeting. That was 2016. That's changed. We've seen Starbucks get caught up here recently with some challenges directly related to customers that were at their facility and some issues related to race, two specific instances on that. And so it's my belief that a company owns its brand, and there's any number of things that organizations and companies can do to control their brand. They can spend more on advertising, they spend more on social, they can create a really wonderful customer experience, but it's the public that owns their reputation. And so while I may not be a customer of Starbucks or United or BP, which is the big oil and gas company that had the tragedy in the Gulf of Mexico some years ago, I have an opinion of them which is different than my brand opinion that I have of them. So I have as a customer and someone that experiences their products, I feel one way, but as just an observer on the outside, I think of something different and see something different. So crises impact reputation, which is more about the public, but it also directly impacts your customers as well.
That's so interesting. The public owns your reputation.
Yeah.
I've never looked at it that way.
Yeah. And so it really came to me, in this construct that if you come from the marketing discipline, and that's obviously where brand lives, you have a vice president of anything. You have a vice president of a major corporation. You have a vice president of pricing, a vice president of place promotion. You have a vice president of any number of things within the marketing organization. And that's their job. And those are levers, those are controls that companies can pull to impact whether I like or dislike the relationship that I have. But for us, there was never really those of us that think about reputation, which typically lives in the communications function of most organizations, there's very few people that actually think about levers that you can actually control your reputation with. And there are 7 is what I write about in the book. There are 7 levers that companies can control to try to impact the public and the way the public views who you are. Different, like I said, different than the way customers view you.
Okay. So let's explore what some of those levers are. So, and because I don't want you to give the whole book away, but how does a company manage something like their reputation?
Yeah, so it has been typically a very unmanageable process, and there are people that carry around on their business card that they are the vice president of reputation management. And very often that was kind of viewed as philanthropy or CSR, sustainability types of issues, or they're the folks that wrote the big check to the United Way, and that was the extent, and they thought that was reputation management. And that's not, is that the public, in my opinion, there are 7 things, and again, we don't need to unpack each one. I'll just highlight a couple of them. There are 7 things that the sum and substance form the way people view the reputation of a company. And it's related to employee endorsements. Do their employees say good things about them, whether that be on Glassdoor or wherever employees talk about it, because they're your primary ambassador for your company. This notion of your leadership, the CEO or the titular head of the organization, people form an opinion about that. We form an opinion about the leaders of most major American corporations and even small ones. Most of us want to know who's actually running it. So the way the leadership is viewed, the way the employees are treated. Financial performance, organizations are viewed as high reputation are those that have actually that perform well, not necessarily quarterly in a publicly traded context, but they've been around for a while. They're doing good things. They're doing good things with their resources and financially resources. And then the last 2 are really a little bit crossover into brand, but it's about their products. Their products are innovative and unique and interesting and solve a unique problem. So there's 7, but there are these 7 things that you can actually measure. And through public opinion research and otherwise, you can ask people, do you believe that the leadership of company X, fill in the blank, runs their business for the good of society? And then you can ask the same thing about employees and about transparency and financial well-being. So there are these 7 categories that you can sort of unpack what reputation really means. And that was the big learning, because it's pretty, if I said, let's go manage a reputation, it's difficult to do that. If I said, let's go manage the retail experience, most people know exactly what to do. People that, and obviously that experience, they know exactly what to do. And so I tried to create a structure that helps people understand exactly what does a reputation management program look like.
Fascinating. Okay. So what is the mindset and the behaviors that of leaders that perform best in a crisis? Like, what is different about them?
Yeah, terrific question. There's a handful of traits. And so I believe in crisis situations. And I came to the discussion of reputation management and my sort of thought leadership on that. I came to it because most people realize they need a reputation management program or some sort of effort post-crisis. Is that some negative event happens, they get misaligned with the public, and they recognize that they need to then go into reputation management. So you're kind of getting to the center of the bullseye with the crisis. And what, in my experience and having done different forms of crisis for over 25 years now, is the key differentiator of the organization. And then I'll talk about the leader, but the key differentiator in the organization is speed. Being fast. There's a vacuum in the marketplace, and newspapers are calling, or the TV station is out front, or your customers are upset. Filling that vacuum of information is the key to those that do crisis great and those that do crisis good. So that's speed. But speed is made up of 2 subcomponents that are critical. First is mission and values. What do you stand for, and why do we stand for it? And then chain of command. How are decisions made? Is the general counsel have to be involved? Does the board need to be aware of this? Can the CEO make these decisions on their own? And so the key personality trait, once you have that level of understanding, the key personality trait in a crisis is really directly related to Wayne Dyer and some thought that he has. And he has this phrase that says, we don't often control what goes on the outside, but we can always control what happens on the inside. And so leaders that don't panic, leaders that don't overreact, leaders that take the time to distinguish smoke from fire, those are 3 traits that have been my experience of leaders that get it right, as long as they remain true to that equation, is that mission and values plus chain of command equals speed, is that they know what they stand for and they're true to it, and they get the help that they need from the chain of command that values them. So that's a lot of word salad there, but those are kind of the individual as well as the institutional traits of those that get crisis right.
Okay, so one of the things that I think of when you say that is when General Motors was having a problem, and boy, I wish I could remember what the problem was. Though that makes this maybe potentially somewhat more interesting. Mary Barra would not budge until the investigation was done. Like Congress and everybody kept trying to get her to say something, stand on a hill, do something, and she's like, until the investigation's done, I'm not weighing in. And that felt to me like it brought the temperature down because she was being a leader, because she was saying, I'm not going to jump to conclusions. Hair's not on fire. I'm not going to make some decision that then could come back and bite me later because it's the wrong decision, but I was making it in the heat of the moment. Is that some of what you're talking about? Absolutely.
Perfect example. And in fact, it's an underappreciated case study of exactly what I'm talking about. And so speed, which is critically important, they had a negative event, and the event doesn't matter. They had a negative event and they responded, but they didn't get way ahead of their ski tips, like you're suggesting, of saying, oh my gosh, we're going to fire this vice president and we're going to issue a recall and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. Because she was absolutely true to those mission and values, and that they are a learning, empathetic, research-based organization, and they're going to get to the bottom of it because they don't know what to fix until they know what to fix. And just sort of flapping around half-cocked is not in anybody's best interest. So understanding the mission and values was the key differentiator. They were not particularly fast, as you point out, with the solution, but they were very fast with articulating what the path forward is going to be. And I think that Americans in particular, but most humans, are pretty understanding, is that you got to fill the vacuum with something, and if not, someone else will fill it for you. But having that clarity was critical, and she did a really, really excellent job of doing that. So your instinct is right on. That's a perfect example of that. It's a little counterintuitive because some people would think you got to fill the vacuum with facts and figures and details and action plans and blue ribbon commissions and whatnot.
Right.
Sometimes you do, but you don't have to. You can actually fill it with leadership and fill that vacuum with leadership and thoughtful calm, as long as nobody's getting hurt. If there was a pharmaceutical company and there was this endemic challenge, you can't fiddle while Rome is burning, but you don't have, you got to stop the bleeding, obviously. But once you've stopped the bleeding, you don't need to jump, way overreact. So great instinct, great question, because that's really an interesting perspective.
Do you think, thank you for that. It's weird because I wouldn't have thought of it if you hadn't been talking about that in particular, but do you think that part of the reason that I can't remember what the crisis was is because of how she handled it, that it didn't, because I can remember a lot of crises in major corporations. This one I can't. Is that sort of how reputation management works, that when you handle it well,
absolutely,
it's so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that you remember the journey, you don't remember the truck stop. And so the crisis is the truck stop. That's the thing, that's the event, that's what have you. But what you recall is this arc of good feeling because that leader showed empathy and understanding and clarity and did a lot of really important things on that particular lever, which is about leadership being a privilege. The distinction is Tony Hayward, who is the CEO of BP, when the Deepwater Horizon rig blew up in the Gulf of Mexico, his commentary was, I would much rather be sailing in the Thames River than dealing with this here in New Orleans or Louisiana, or wherever the case may be. And so we remember that truck stop more than we remember the journey. And BP has clearly, it was a tragedy, it was a huge mistake. Yeah. But BP's done some terrific work to remediate and to get it right.
Right.
That's a great point.
So, okay. So, and what about this whole Boeing whatever this plane is.
737 Max 8, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I sort of feel like, boy, they have so screwed this thing up. They're never going to be able to fly that plane.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree. I don't think it's quite as never is a really, really long time.
Yeah, true.
Come back as the Max 9 or the Max 8 Plus. Who knows? It could come back like that. That's a branding question. But no, absolutely. Their response was slow. Their response was legalistic. There was no clear articulation of mission and values. There was no real articulation of empathy. There have been a number of stories written about that. So again, just you, and that's the point about brand versus reputation. You and I are probably not buyers of Boeing. That's
right.
Not going to buy a Boeing. But we as observers, the public, we have got a view of their reputation. You have formed a view about them, and you will never buy a Boeing in your life. I would assume you're never going to buy a Boeing in your life.
Yes, I would assume as well.
but you have formed an opinion on that. So that's that point about reputation. But yes, they were not really clear on what they stood for. Their initial messaging was kind of all over the place. Their chain of command got way bogged down with attorneys and being very, very legalistic and lawyer laden. And so that was a challenge. And then just fundamentally, they were slow, kind of blaming it on the pilot, blaming it both incidents of those planes on pilot,
right.
As opposed to a different tack that they could have taken that probably would have been better.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. This is so interesting to me, which is part of the reason why I wanted you to be here. So I am going to take a quick sponsor break, and then I have some more questions for you. Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast is happy to be sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken digital audio entertainment and information. They have over 150,000 titles to choose from, and you can listen to them on any device, including whatever you're hearing us on right now. And if you sign up at our link, which is audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, you get one free audiobook and a 1-month trial of the service. Some examples of books you can listen to on audible.com are Do Business Better by Damian Mason and Breathe to Succeed by Sandy Abrams. So visit audibletrial.com/businessgrowth. Explore the books that are of interest to you and receive one free audiobook when you sign up for the trial. Today we're speaking with Bill Coletti about how to handle a crisis in business. So, most of the people listening are small business owners, and I'm imagining crisis can happen on a smaller scale for a small business as opposed to a large company. So what can small business owners learn from these large companies about crisis management?
Great question. And I don't know if it's exactly what they can learn from big businesses, because there's such a misalignment on scale. But I do think that they can learn something that I teach and share with a lot of our large enterprise clients, is that the single best thing and the easiest thing that a startup or a small enterprise can do is, with their leadership team, as they're talking about and trying to understand their mission and values, pick up the Wall Street Journal or New York Times or your hometown newspaper business section and said, if that had happened to us, how would we react? Whatever that is. Okay, so right now we've got a pharmaceutical company that's in the crosshairs, some major litigation victory, for the plaintiffs. For an organization to say, if our product was abused and used poorly, and people got hurt, and then we got sued, how would we respond? And so I think great leaders that I work with in big or small corporations take 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes a quarter, or at their monthly meeting or whatever their leadership structure is to say, if this would happen to us, how would we respond? And it does a couple of different things. One is that it forces clarity and chain of command, because there'll be some people in the organization that are just like, have no clue of what to do, and that tells the leader something relative to chain of command. You might hear from your lawyer or your legal team, your legal advisor that says, well, we would say absolutely nothing. We can't say anything because we're going to get sued. That tells you something. But what it also does is that if the hypothetical in this 10-minute exchange that a company has, is it lets the CEO set a tone and set a vision, which goes directly back to mission and values, that says any number of things. But one I love to hear is that if we screwed up and we hurt somebody, first thing we're going to do is apologize. Because, Diane, if I hurt you in a traffic accident, or if I hurt you on a street corner or wherever, I would apologize, because that's what humans do. And that's what nice people do. And it would, while you might be really pissed or angry or hurt, you would accept that apology as a sincere mistake. And so if it was not malicious intent and our product hurt somebody, let's talk about apologizing. Organizations should have that exercise, and stakeholders within the company, general counsel, marketing, whomever, should say, oh my gosh, absolutely, we can't do that. It is so much easier to do that in a hypothetical, something you pulled out of the headlines, as opposed to while you've got 60 minutes on line 2 that you're waiting that is waiting for an answer. So that's just a mini case study of just saying, hey, if this happened to us, how would we react? It doesn't even need to be the Wall Street Journal. It could just be something that happened in your adjacent industry, maybe one of your competitors, or something about you heard, through the grapevine of your industry chatter. But talking about it in advance makes people better. And then you don't need people like me. And that would be a great next chapter of my career, where we sort of put me out of business. But unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, how you look at it, their companies aren't doing that, and having the discipline to say, what if? And people would be so much better if they did that.
So why aren't they doing it, do you think?
Oh, they're busy dealing with logistics. They're busy dealing with inventory control. They're busy dealing with pricing. They're busy dealing with HR. They're ostriches with their head in the sand and say, that could never to me. I'm a small, one state bank with 3 branches. That's not applicable to me. I'm a small lumber yard in San Diego. Never happened to me. That nobody cares what happens to our organization. So they do it because everybody's busy. We all, I've very rarely sat in an hour scheduled meeting that didn't last an hour. And so, issues fill the vacuum. And then 2 is that people just think from a hubris standpoint, oh, well, that can't happen to me. Our employees are too good and we don't make mistakes like that. And that would be pretty foolish. So it's everybody's busy, hubris, and sticking your head in the ground like an ostrich.
Okay, so let's talk about the flip side. Well, it's not necessarily the flip side, but talk about the impact on a small business, because I love what you're saying about just practice on things that are happening around you. So if, God forbid, something does happen with your company, at least you're better prepared because you've been sort of, role-playing this thing. But so my gut says a crisis can be a lot harder for a small business to overcome than a big business. Is that a fair belief?
I'll push back and ask you to clarify. What do you mean by overcome? Do you mean get out of the news cycle and no longer be the subject of the front page, or getting your business back to normal as fast as you can and continuing to grow your enterprise? So you can get out of the paper.
I think getting your business, getting it to go away and getting your business back on the right track so that you're spending your time and energy growing your business instead of trying to put out a fire.
Yeah. So yes, that is harder. And that directly relates to resources, leader of an organization, Tony Hayward, the companies we've mentioned, Starbucks, Tony Hayward, Boeing, et cetera, et cetera. The CEO can go focus on shoring up their relationship with major customers because they've got a very, very talented senior vice president that can manage the incident and manage the challenges, both media and perception, as well as regulatory or whatever. Most small business don't have that luxury of resources in order to do that. The other thing is that, most small businesses are overly dependent on a few key customers. And if those key customers get upset and leave, then that really sort of changes the equation. Large businesses, a little bit more diversified, not significantly impacted by one particular customer that's there. On the flip side is that sometimes small businesses are just faster. They just say, we are sorry, we screwed up, we're going to fix it. And if they've thought about their reputation, because the goal in most crises is simply to just get the benefit of the doubt. People are forgiving. Okay. People are forgiving. And if you strive to get the benefit of the doubt, and you get the benefit of the doubt by saying you're sorry in situations that dictate it, some don't, situations that dictate that, is that you get that benefit. And it's easier for small business because they're usually closer to their community. They're closer to, I don't like the word stakeholders, but those that matter most. They really are, they are closer to those that matter most as opposed to a large enterprise. So those are some of the advantages that small business have over large business.
Okay, so that's helpful. It's sort of, it becomes not so scary. If I were going to push back on that, I'd say, with them being so close to the stakeholders in their community, they can't really afford not to act fast.
I hope
so. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And the ivory tower. Yeah. The ivory tower is the definition of a major American corporation. Is the ivory tower, and everything looks pretty good from up there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So that is, if we're keeping score, kind of score one for the small business, that they have that ability to. Yeah. And it's not like they have a choice, quite frankly, because they're at the ground floor of the ivory tower, not at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's interesting. We can bob and weave and be flexible and all of that, which is really great. We just have to make sure we're doing it in a lot of different areas.
Mm-hmm. And also small business have an advantage because they really, really know who matters most. They know their biggest check writers. They know their employees really, really well. And so they really know when it comes to mission and values, back to that notion of speed and chain of command for that matter, they know who matters. Major American corporations that are like all over the place and different verticals, it's difficult to really know who matters most because it's like situational ethics. It's situational stakeholder. But small businesses have that advantage.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of it that way. I get that. Okay. Awesome. So, crisis hits. What's the first step you would advise a company to take?
Learn the facts. Just find out what's going on, because smoke versus fire is something that's really important. You gotta figure out, is this truly a fire? Is this smoke? And so one of the things that frustrates me when I walk into clients or I talk to CEOs and leaders is that some very well-intentioned marketing person says, "Oh my gosh, this is blowing up on Twitter." I have no idea what blowing up on Twitter means. I have no idea what that means. I don't understand that concept. I suppose intuitively I get the intent, but as a leader, I don't know how to operationalize that information. So the first thing is really, let's get the facts. Let's understand what's going on. And so that's really, really, really the most important thing. And then the second most important thing is say something. You got to say something to the public, to those that matter most. You got to tell them something. And it could be, much like to your excellent Mary Barra example, it could be, we're looking into this. We know that this is important and we're going to get right back to you. And then do it. Then get back to them. Don't just buy the time and then, don't deliver.
Yeah.
But do those two things, which is get to the facts, get to the bottom, and say something. And no comment is not really an option. Is that those are really, really two best things that sort of organizations could do. There's more that's there, but I think at the outset, you get those two things right. And back to my case study, when senior leader teams, they should talk about that. Are we okay saying something even though we have nothing? And some organizations are and some organizations aren't. And I'd like to know that in advance, if we're okay saying something when we have nothing.
Right. And don't you think that as long as they know what they're going to say, it makes it easier? It feels to me like this flying by the seat of your pants thing is what gets most companies in trouble. So they're not prepared.
Absolutely. Which I think is the simple remedy is, let's have a staff meeting and talk about the headline, ripped from the headline. Let's say, what would we do if this was us? Not hard, not expensive. You don't need an expensive consultant. You don't need a formal, strategic planning agenda. You just say, based on what we read in the paper, facts don't matter because what's in the paper are the facts.
Yeah.
Let's say, how would we react to this?
Yeah, I love that practice. I think part of what I like about it is that it becomes a practice, so it becomes something that is normalized, so that in the event that something does happen, that they can say, oh, this sounds familiar. When we talked about this, this is what we said we would do.
And it's no need to panic.
Yeah, right. It's empowering.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then that feels like part of what comes out of that is for the community, for the observer, for the consumer, for the client, whoever it is, that we feel better because we feel like it's in steady hands, because they're handling it in a way that is calm.
Yes, absolutely. You are, the joy of leadership is the privilege of being in charge. And if you want people to give you the benefit of the doubt, you got to let them know you're in charge. You got to let them know we're on top of this. We are aware of this situation. We are working on it as quickly as we can, and we're going to keep you updated every 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever the cadence is that you determine that's there. But absolutely, that's what people want, and that's what people expect. And with social media, which is obviously been a big game changer in what I do.
Yeah. Someone's
going to fill the void, and somebody's going to say something. You might as well be on the record with what you know when you know it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you've noticed, it sounds like there's been a shift in. Is it a shift in? Do we have to be quicker now because of social media, or should we have always been quick? Or
yeah, I think you have to be quicker. There's a 24-hour news cycle. You used to be able to keep your powder dry until the 6 p.m. news, and that you knew the newspaper wasn't going to come out until 6 a.m. the next morning, or whatever the case may be. So now, everything's real time, and the difference between a story written at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and when you read it in your news feed at 5 in the morning, there's no differentiation. So yeah, it clearly has changed. It's changed everything. You got to move a lot faster.
Yeah, it's really a shame. Because I think part of the reason why people don't handle crisis well is because they feel that they're reacting, not responding to whatever went on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Wow.
But it's we're never going back. We're not going to unring that bell.
Right. Right. We got to learn how to deal with the current reality that we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of current reality, would you please share? I got to know. So about your experience in Bulgaria, and then I'm curious about why you made a big change from advising them to advising companies.
Sure. It's a fun story. So that was like 1999 when I was over there. And so I had just finished running, and I lived in Bulgaria for 5 years. And so got there in January of 1995. And in 94, I had just finished, which, gosh, when you say those dates, it just feels like so long ago, because it was so long ago. But I had just finished running a statewide campaign in 1994. And anybody that that's been involved in politics will say, I never want to do that again. That's exhausting. And so November, December of 94, I moved to Bulgaria in January of 95. And just through a series of circumstances, stumbled my way into meeting the American ambassador. I was the first executive director of the American Chamber of Commerce in Bulgaria. Through that, became affiliated with a company that was doing work for the Prime Minister. And this was all on Bulgaria's journey into the European Union, which started with their journey to joining NATO. And one of the requirements on a very, very long list of that was the work that we did for him at that time was setting up a very strong strategic communicator, as well as a very tactical spokesperson. So we had a director of communications and then a spokesperson. Spokesperson was hand-to-hand combat, daily communications. Director of communications was much more strategic, long-term, and that's one of the soft targets for NATO, and then ultimately for the European Union integration back in those days, was that you had this sort of, the EU wanted to incentivize organizations to be forward-thinking, not just reactionary, exactly like you just said a few minutes ago, by the way. And so that was the work that we did. Other work we did was helping them on privatizing their pension fund. So we worked for the Bulgarian stock market, creating a vehicle for there to be privatization of pension funds. And then that work was directly related to the Ministry of Labor because that's where the pensions were administered. So that's the quick version of how I worked with the Prime Minister in 98, 99 pre-NATO.
Wow, that is... Okay, why'd you leave it?
I left it to come run another. I left it to come run another campaign. So in 2000, a buddy of mine was running for Congress, or was running for U.S. Senate, a congressman running for U.S. Senate in Florida, and came home in 2000 to run that. And I had felt like we were doing a lot of really, really great things in Bulgaria, and I was ready to come home, be with friends and family.
Yeah.
And I got this, neat opportunity to get back to running a campaign.
Wow. Okay, so then you go from campaign to working with companies.
Yep. And
okay.
Yeah,
wait. I just have a quick question for you. Before you, was part of what compelled you to do that running campaigns always has crisis communication attached to it?
Absolutely. And when you're doing campaigns are really just sort of crisis to crisis. You're kind of careening off the walls, and the goal is to have one fewer crisis than the people you're running against, and that's the objective. And so we tried to create them, and we also tried to minimize their impact whenever we worked with our client, whenever we worked with candidates. And so transitioning that to corporations is a pretty logical transition.
Yeah, I'll bet. And it sounds like you're happy you made the transition. Oh,
absolutely. Love what I do. I miss politics every now and then. But the politics now and the politics of then are completely different things. So I'm very happy, working with business leaders and companies big and small as they sort of manage through these situations, because this is all we do. Most people in this aspect of communications, they do crisis as a side gig, but this is all we do. So we've got a lot of experience in it, and really like being the calm, cool head in the room when that's what people need most.
That's so great. I really appreciate you sharing this information. I've learned an awful lot, and I'm sure that the listeners did too, which is always the goal. Will you tell the listeners how they can find you and how they can get your book and anything else you think they should know, please? Absolutely. So the name of our firm is Kith, Kith, and it's kith.co is our website. And I'm at bcoletti at kith.co is my email. Really active on Twitter, again, bcoletti. And then I love LinkedIn. So I tried to publish an article a week on LinkedIn about various topics of crisis leadership for individuals, as well as reputation management. Cool. That's so great. Thank you. I'm going to go look that up on LinkedIn. Because I love this subject. I think it's great, and it's so necessary. I mean, it always has been. As we said at the beginning of this, I feel like we're sort of in this weird heightened state, especially with the internet. So the more people can learn about what to do and how to handle things, the calmer they'll be and the better off their company will be. So thanks for spending time with me and sharing this information. It's my pleasure. And thank you for what you do. I know just my listening to the episodes of your podcast, I know people find great value and benefit of the people you bring on and the ideas you share. So thank you for what you do. Oh, thank you. It's a labor of love for all the small business owners out there who are really trying to do great things. So, and speaking of them, listeners, thank you for tuning in and listening. You are absolutely who we're doing this thing for. And our sponsor, if you would like to get a free trial of audible.com as well as a free audiobook, just go to audibletrial.com/businessgrowth to sign up. As always, continue to prosper and be curious. And until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.
Great careers are forged out of great relationships. Your success, whatever your field, relies and thrives on the support and insights of others. I'm Andy Lapata, an author and speaker on the power of professional relationships. In the Connected Leadership podcast, I have the privilege of interviewing people from around the world to understand the relationships that have made a difference on their journey and how their insights can help you. From Nobel Prize winners to Olympians, from NASA astronauts to peace campaigners, my guests have shared some captivating moments from their lives and careers. Combined with experts from leading universities, cutting-edge authors and giants of business, the Connected Leadership podcast aims to inspire, educate and entertain.